Michael Henderson stared at the menu he'd already read 3 times. The plastic cover was sticky, and someone had spilled coffee on the bottom corner, leaving a brown stain that had dried weeks ago. He wasn't really reading it anyway. The words just gave him something to look at besides the empty seat across from him. Outside, snow was starting to fall. Not the pretty kind you see in movies, but the wet, heavy snow that makes everything gray and cold. People rushed past the diner window, their arms full of shopping bags and wrapped presents. A father lifted his daughter onto his shoulders and she squealed with delight, pointing at something Michael couldn't see. He looked away. The diner was almost empty. An elderly couple sat near the front, sharing a piece of pie. The man cut a bite and held the fork out to his wife, who smiled and leaned forward. 40 years of marriage, Michael guessed. Maybe 50. They had that comfortable look about them, like 2 people who didn't need to talk to communicate. Behind the counter, Rita, the waitress who'd served him twice already tonight, wiped down the coffee machine. She was somewhere in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and tired eyes that had seen too many lonely people on holidays. She caught him looking and gave him a sad little smile. The kind of smile that said, "I see you, honey, and I'm sorry." Michael checked his phone again. No messages, no calls. The screen glowed blue in his hand, showing the time. 7:47 p.m., Christmas Eve. He had 17 unread emails, all work-related. 3 were marked urgent. He didn't open them. His coffee had gone cold. He took a sip anyway, grimacing at the bitter taste. The cup left a ring on the table when he set it down, overlapping with several other rings from earlier. He should probably leave, go back to his apartment downtown. But the thought of that empty space with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture made his chest tight. "More coffee, hun?" Rita appeared beside him, pot in hand. "Sure. Thanks." She poured, steam rising from the cup. "You doing okay?" Michael nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Rita had asked him the same question an hour ago when he'd first ordered dinner. He'd said he was fine then, too. They both knew it was a lie. "Well, you just holler if you need anything." She patted his shoulder, a quick motherly gesture, and moved away. His dinner sat in front of him, barely touched. Turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans. The Christmas special, according to the laminated sign on the table. It should have been good. Rita had brought it out hot with extra gravy just like he'd asked. But everything tasted like cardboard. He'd spent last Christmas alone too. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had taken their son to her parents' house in Seattle. The divorce had been final for 6 months by then, but the wound was still fresh. This year, Jennifer and Tyler were in Seattle again. Tyler was 15 now, more interested in his friends and video games than his father. Michael had called him that morning, catching him between whatever teenage boys do on Christmas Eve. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah, Merry Christmas." "Uh-huh. School's good." "Yeah, I got your card, thanks. Listen, I gotta go. We're about to leave for Grandma's, okay? Yeah, you too. Bye." 43 seconds. Michael had timed it, watching the call duration on his screen after Tyler hung up. 43 seconds with his only child on Christmas Eve. He picked up his fork and pushed the mashed potatoes around his plate. When had it gotten so bad? There wasn't one moment he could point to, one big mistake. It was 1,000 little choices. Working late instead of going to Tyler's baseball games. Answering emails during dinner. Missing Jennifer's birthday because of a client meeting in Chicago. Choosing the promotion over the marriage, the deal over the family, the money over the moments, and now he had the money. God, did he have the money? His consulting firm had 3 offices and 62 employees. He'd made partner at 35, opened his own company at 38, and by 40 he was more successful than he'd ever dreamed. His apartment cost more per month than his parents' first house. He drove a car that turned heads. He wore suits that cost what some people made in a month. But tonight, on Christmas Eve, he sat alone in a half-empty diner, eating cold turkey dinner and trying not to cry into his mashed potatoes. The string of lights above the counter flickered. One bulb was burned out, leaving a gap in the pattern like a missing tooth. Someone had taped paper snowflakes to the windows, the kind kids make in school by folding paper and cutting shapes. They were crooked and cheerful, defying the sadness that seemed to seep from the walls. Michael remembered making snowflakes with Tyler when he was little. They'd spread newspaper on the kitchen table, and Tyler would carefully fold the paper, his tongue sticking out in concentration. Jennifer would make hot chocolate, and they'd hang the snowflakes in the windows with tape. Tyler always wanted to make just one more until they'd covered every window in the house. When was the last time he'd made a snowflake? When was the last time he'd sat at a table with his son and just made something together? For no reason except that it was fun. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it hoping, but it was just another email. A colleague wishing him happy holidays. He set the phone face down on the table. Rita came by again, eyeing his full plate. Everything okay with the food? It's great. I'm just not very hungry. She nodded, understanding. Want me to box it up for you? No, it's okay. I'll try to eat a bit more. But they both knew he wouldn't. She cleared the elderly couple's table, chatting with them as they counted out bills for the check. They left a generous tip, Michael noticed. Rita pocketed the money with a grateful smile and waved as they shuffled out into the snow. Now it was just Michael and a young guy in the back booth, hunched over his laptop with headphones in. The guy had been there when Michael arrived, nursing the same cup of coffee for hours. Another person with nowhere else to go, Michael figured. He watched the snow fall harder outside. The streetlights had come on, turning the snowflakes golden as they drifted past. A bus splashed through slush at the intersection. More people hurried past, heads down against the wind. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone except him. This wasn't how he'd imagined his life turning out. At 25, fresh out of business school, he'd had a plan. Build a career, yes, but also build a family. Be the kind of father his dad had been, present and involved. Take his kids camping, teach them to throw a football, help with homework at the kitchen table, have Sunday dinners with everyone together, talking and laughing. But somehow the plan had gotten away from him. Work demanded more and more, and he kept giving it. Just one more project, one more client, one more deal. He told himself he was doing it for his family, to give them a good life. But somewhere along the way, the work became everything, and his family became the thing he'd do later, when he had more time. Except later never came. And now his family was gone, scattered across the country, living lives that didn't include him. He was successful beyond his wildest dreams and lonelier than he'd ever been. Michael picked up his fork one more time, determined to eat something. But his throat was tight and his eyes were burning. And suddenly he couldn't remember why he was even trying. He set the fork down carefully and looked out at the snow, watching it bury the world in white. Michael was reaching for his wallet when he felt the tug on his sleeve. Small fingers, insistent but gentle. He looked down, startled. A little girl stood beside his booth, maybe 7 years old, with dark hair pulled into 2 braids that were starting to come loose. She wore a puffy winter coat that was a size too big, the sleeves covering her hands. Her brown eyes were serious, studying him with the intensity only children have. "Excuse me, mister," she said, her voice clear and confident. "Do you want to have dinner with us?" Michael blinked, not sure he'd heard correctly. "I'm sorry, what? You dinner?" "With us." She pointed toward a booth near the window where a woman sat with a younger boy. "My mama says nobody should eat alone on Christmas." "Are you alone?" The question was direct, without any of the dancing around that adults do. Michael felt his throat tighten. Yes, I am." The girl nodded, as if this confirmed something she'd already suspected. "I'm Sophie. That's my brother Danny, he's 4. And that's our mama. We're having dinner too. Wanna come?" "Sophie." The woman at the other booth was hurrying over, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. Sophie, you can't just go up to strangers and—" "But Mama, you said nobody should be alone on Christmas. And he's alone, and we have enough room in our booth. And, Sophie, honey, that's very kind. But this gentleman probably wants his privacy." The woman looked at Michael apologetically. She was younger than him, maybe mid-30s, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many long shifts and not enough sleep. She wore hospital scrubs under her open coat, blue with little snowflakes on them. Her name tag said Elena and St. Mary's Hospital. Michael should have politely declined. Should have thanked them for the offer, paid his bill, and gone home. That's what a normal person would do. You don't have Christmas dinner with strangers just because a 7-year-old asks you to. But Michael wasn't feeling normal. And there was something about the way Sophie was looking at him, hopeful and certain that he'd say yes, that made all his defenses crack. "I'd like that very much," he heard himself say. Sophie's face lit up like the Christmas lights strung across the diner. "Really? You'll come?" "If it's okay with your mother." Elena hesitated, clearly weighing the situation. Michael could see her doing the mental calculations, wondering if he was safe, if this was a good idea, if she should take her daughter's kind heart as a sign or a warning. Finally, she smiled, a genuine smile that softened her tired face. Of course it's okay. Please join us. Sophie grabbed his hand without hesitation, her small fingers warm in his. Come on, I saved you the good side of the booth. You can see the snow better. Michael let himself be led to their table, feeling strangely like he was floating. Danny looked up from his coloring book, eyeing Michael with the suspicion of a 4-year-old who doesn't like changes to his routine. Who's that? Danny asked, pointing a blue crayon at Michael. This is... Sophie paused, realizing she didn't know his name. Michael. My name's Michael. This is Michael, Sophie announced, as if introducing royalty. He was eating alone, so I invited him to eat with us. Because of Christmas, Danny considered this, then nodded solemnly. Okay, you can sit there. He pointed to the spot across from him. But that's Sophie's side, so don't mess up her stuff. I wouldn't dream of it, Michael said seriously. Sliding into the booth, Elena settled back in her seat, and Rita appeared almost immediately, a knowing look on her face. Well now, isn't this nice? Can I get you folks anything? We're gonna have the Christmas special, Sophie said. All of us. With extra rolls. An apple pie after. Right, Mama? Right, baby. Though maybe we should. I'd like to buy dinner, Michael interrupted. For all of us. If that's okay. Elena's pride flickered across her face, the automatic refusal forming on her lips. But Sophie was already bouncing in her seat with excitement, and Danny was nodding enthusiastically, and Michael found himself adding quickly, Please. It would make me really happy. It's Christmas. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, thank you. That's very kind. 4 Christmas specials coming up, Rita said, winking at Michael, and I'll make sure those rolls are extra warm. As Rita walked away, an awkward silence settled over the table. Michael realized he hadn't had a meal with a family in almost 2 years. He'd forgotten how to do this, how to make small talk with people who weren't clients or colleagues. Sophie, thankfully, had no such problems. So where's your family, Michael? Sophie, Elena said sharply. What? I'm just asking. It's okay, Michael said. My son is with his mother. They live in Seattle now. That's far away, Sophie said sympathetically. Like airplane far? Yeah, airplane far. We don't have an airplane, Danny offered helpfully. We have a car, but it's old and makes funny noises. Danny, Elena warned, but her lips twitched with amusement. It does, Danny insisted. It goes when Mama starts it. Michael found himself smiling. My first car made noises like that too. I had to hit the dashboard to make the heater work. Did you hit it hard? Danny's eyes were wide, not too hard, just a good thump right there. Michael demonstrated with his fist. Cool, Danny breathed. Sophie had pulled out a folder from beside her on the seat. Want to see my drawings? I'm really good at animals. My teacher says I might be an artist when I grow up. But I think I want to be a veterinarian. That's an animal doctor. I know, Michael said. That sounds like a great job. It is. I'm going to have my own clinic and help all the animals. Dogs and cats and birds and everything. Do you have any pets? Michael shook his head. No, my apartment doesn't allow them. That's sad. Everyone should have a pet. We have a goldfish named Bubbles. Danny named him. Bubbles is orange, Danny announced. And he poops a lot. Danny. Elena covered her face with her hands, but she was laughing. Michael was laughing too, really laughing. The kind that comes from your belly and makes your eyes water. When was the last time he'd laughed like this? He couldn't remember. Rita brought their food, plates piled high with turkey and stuffing and all the fixings. The smell alone was enough to make Michael's mouth water. And suddenly he was hungry, genuinely hungry. For the first time in days. Okay, everyone. Let's say grace, Elena said, reaching out her hands. Sophie and Danny grabbed hers immediately. And then Sophie was reaching for Michael's hand, her small fingers wrapping around his. Danny grabbed his other hand, sticky with crayon wax. Michael couldn't remember the last time he'd held hands for grace. Jennifer had tried to maintain the tradition for a while, but he'd always been too busy, checking his phone or thinking about work. Eventually, she'd stopped trying. Elena's voice was soft. Thank you for this food, for this warm place, for bringing us together tonight. Thank you for new friends and kind hearts, amen. Amen, Sophie and Danny chorused. Amen, Michael whispered, his voice rough. They ate, and Sophie talked. Boy, did Sophie talk. She told Michael about her school, about her teacher, Mrs. Peterson, who had a cat named Whiskers, about her best friend Lily, who was visiting her grandparents in Ohio, about the Christmas program at school where she'd been an angel. I had to wear a halo, she said, making a face. It kept falling off. But I remembered all my lines. Danny was a sheep. He just had to go baa. I was a good sheep, Danny said defensively. Everybody said so. You were a very good sheep, Elena agreed, ruffling his hair. Michael listened to it all, soaking it in like a man dying of thirst. The ordinary details of their lives felt like treasures. School programs and goldfish and car troubles. When was the last time anyone had shared these kinds of stories with him? His business dinners were all strategy and profits and market share. Even his conversations with Tyler had become stilted, reduced to basic questions and one-word answers. What about you, Michael? Elena asked during a rare pause in Sophie's monologue. What do you do? I have a consulting company. Business consulting. What's consulting? Sophie asked. I help other businesses figure out how to do better. Like a teacher? Michael considered this. Yeah, kind of like a teacher. Cool, my mama's a nurse. She helps people when they're hurt or sick. She works in the emergency room, which means she sees people when they're really, really hurt. That must be hard, Michael said to Elena. She shrugged. It can be, but it's good work. Important work. I like being able to help people. Even when they're grumpy, Danny added. Mama says some people are grumpy when they're hurt, but she's nice to them anyway. That's because being hurt is scary, Sophie explained to her brother with the patience of an older sibling. When people are scared, they get grumpy. Michael thought about that. When people are scared, they get grumpy. He'd been grumpy for 2 years now, snapping at employees, impatient with everyone. Maybe he'd been scared too. Scared that if he stopped moving, stopped working, he'd have to face how empty his life had become. Rita brought the pie, warm and topped with vanilla ice cream that melted into the crust. Danny got ice cream on his nose, and Sophie laughed so hard she snorted, which made Danny laugh, which made all of them laugh, and Michael Henderson, sitting in a worn booth in a half-empty diner on Christmas Eve, realized something. For the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel alone. The pie was nearly gone, just crumbs left on the plates when Sophie pulled out her colored pencils. She had a whole set, 24 colors in a worn cardboard box, and she spread them carefully on the table like they were precious jewels. I'm going to draw you a picture, Michael, she announced. What's your favorite animal? Michael had to think about it. When was the last time anyone asked him about his favorite anything? I guess a dog. I always wanted a dog when I was a kid. What kind of dog? A golden retriever. My best friend had one named Buddy. I used to go to his house after school just to play with that dog. Sophie nodded seriously and began to draw. Her tongue stuck out slightly as she concentrated, just like Tyler used to do. The memory made Michael's chest ache, but it was a good ache, if that made sense. Like touching a bruise and remembering you're still alive. Danny had abandoned his coloring book and was building something with sugar packets, stacking them into a precarious tower. Elena watched him with tired eyes, occasionally steadying the tower when it threatened to collapse. How long have you been a nurse? Michael asked her. 8 years. I went back to school after Danny was born. She said it simply, but Michael could imagine what that meant. Night classes while caring for 2 small children. Student loans, exhaustion. That must have been tough. It was necessary. Elena's voice was matter-of-fact. We needed the income, and I wanted to do something meaningful. Nursing school was hard, but I'm glad I did it. Where's their father? Michael asked, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry, that's none of my business. Elena was quiet for a moment. Sophie kept drawing, but Michael noticed her hand had stilled on the paper. Danny's sugar packet tower fell over, and he started rebuilding it without complaint. He died, Elena said finally. Almost 2 years ago. Construction accident. I'm so sorry. His name was David. Elena's voice was soft but steady. He was a good man. A great father. He used to come home covered in sawdust, and the kids would run to him anyway, and he'd scoop them both up, one in each arm. Sophie still talks about that sometimes. How strong Daddy was. Sophie looked up from her drawing. Daddy could lift me and Danny at the same time. He'd spin us around until we got dizzy. I remember, Danny said quietly. His voice had lost its earlier excitement. Daddy made funny faces. He did, Elena agreed, her eyes bright with unshed tears. He was always making you two laugh. Michael didn't know what to say. His divorce suddenly seemed like such a small thing compared to what this family had lost. He'd walked away from his marriage. Elena hadn't had a choice. I miss him every day, Elena continued. But you keep going, you know? For them. She looked at her children with such fierce love that Michael had to look away. You get up every morning and you make breakfast and you pack lunches and you go to work and you come home and you help with homework and you give baths and you read stories. And some days it feels impossible, but you do it anyway because they need you to. You're a good mother, Michael said. I'm a tired mother, Elena corrected with a small smile, but I do my best. Your best is pretty amazing. She looked at him, really looked at him, and Michael felt seen in a way he hadn't in years. What about you, Michael? Why are you eating alone on Christmas Eve? He could have given her the simple answer. Divorced son lives across the country, but something about the evening, about the way Elena had just opened up to him, made him want to be honest. I messed up, he said. I had everything. A wife who loved me, a great kid. But I was so focused on work, on building my company, on being successful. I thought I was doing it for them, you know? Providing for them. But I was really doing it for me. For my ego, and by the time I realized that, it was too late. Jennifer, my ex-wife, she tried. God, she tried for years. But I wasn't there. Not really. I was always at the office or on my phone or thinking about the next deal. And one day she just gave up. Took our son and moved to Seattle to be near her parents. How old is your son? Tyler, he's 15. Do you see him? Not enough. Maybe once every few months. He's got his life there now. Friends, school, activities. I'm just the dad who sends birthday money and shows up occasionally. Sophie had stopped drawing entirely now, listening intently. Do you call him? Sometimes. It's hard to know what to say. We used to be close, but I miss so much. I don't know who he is anymore. You could learn, Sophie said simply. You just have to ask questions. That's what my teacher says. If you want to know something, you ask. Michael smiled despite the heaviness in his chest. You're pretty smart, you know that? Sophie shrugged. I'm good at school. She's on the honor roll, Elena said proudly. Both marking periods this year. That's wonderful, Sophie. It's just paying attention, Sophie said, matter of fact. If you pay attention, school is easy. Michael felt the words hit him like a punch. If you pay attention. That was the problem, wasn't it? He hadn't paid attention. Not to the things that mattered. Rita came by with the coffee pot. How's everyone doing over here? Need anything else? I think we're good, Elena said. Just the check when you get a chance. Already taken care of, Rita said, nodding at Michael. This gentleman paid for everything earlier. That's right, Michael said. My treat, remember? Elena looked embarrassed. Michael, you really didn't have to. I wanted to. Really. This has been the best Christmas Eve I've had in a long time. And it was true. Sitting here with this little family, listening to Sophie chatter and Danny's observations and Elena's quiet strength, Michael felt more alive than he had in months, maybe years. Danny yawned hugely, nearly falling off his seat. I'm tired, Mama. I know, baby. We should probably get going. Elena started gathering their things, stuffing crayons back into boxes and folding up Danny's coloring book. Wait, Sophie said. I'm not done with Michael's picture. You can finish it at home, honey, but it's for him. For Michael. Sophie looked at her drawing critically. It's not perfect yet. It's perfect to me, Michael said. He meant it. The drawing showed a golden retriever, sitting in front of what looked like a Christmas tree. The dog was smiling if dogs could smile in drawings, and Sophie had colored it carefully, staying inside the lines. You can have it, Sophie said shyly. To remember us, I love it. Thank you, Sophie. Michael took the drawing carefully like it was something precious, because it was. They all stood bundling into coats and scarves. Danny was drooping with exhaustion, and Elena lifted him easily onto her hip. He laid his head on her shoulder, thumb finding its way to his mouth. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, coating the cars and sidewalks in white. The wind had picked up, making the Christmas lights sway and dance. Where are you parked? Michael asked. Just around the corner. We'll be fine. Let me walk you to your car. It's dark and slippery. Elena looked like she might argue, but Sophie grabbed Michael's hand again. Come on, you can make sure we don't fall. So Michael walked with them, Sophie holding his hand and chattering about snow angels and snowmen, Elena carrying Danny, all of them moving carefully on the icy sidewalk. Their car was old, just like Danny had said, with rust on the doors and a crack in the windshield. But it was clean inside, and there were booster seats strapped in the back. Elena buckled Danny into his seat. He was already half asleep, his head lolling to the side. Sophie climbed in next to him, still energetic despite the late hour. "Thank you for dinner," Elena said to Michael, "and for the company. I think we all needed this tonight." "I needed it more than you know," Michael said honestly. "Will we see you again?" Sophie asked through the open car door. Michael hesitated. The smart thing would be to say no, to let this be a nice memory and nothing more. These weren't his people. This wasn't his life. He had his own complicated mess to sort out, but looking at Sophie's hopeful face, at Elena's tired smile, at Danny sleeping peacefully in his car seat, Michael found himself saying, "I'd like that. If it's okay with your mom." Elena considered him, her nurse's eyes seeing more than he was comfortable with. Finally, she pulled out her phone. "Give me your number. We'll figure something out." They exchanged numbers, thumbs clumsy in the cold. Elena started the car and it made exactly the noise Danny had described, before finally catching. The engine settled into a rough idle. "Merry Christmas, Michael," Sophie called out the window as they pulled away. "Merry Christmas," he called back, waving until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Michael stood there on the snowy sidewalk for a long moment, Sophie's drawing clutched in his hand, feeling something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Christmas morning came too bright and too early. Michael woke on his couch, still wearing yesterday's shirt and pants, Sophie's drawing on the coffee table where he'd carefully placed it the night before. His apartment was silent except for the hum of the heating system and the distant sound of the city waking up. He made coffee and stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered city in shades of pink and gold. Usually he loved these windows, loved the view of the city spread out below him. But today the apartment felt wrong. Too big, too empty, too quiet. His phone sat on the counter, dark and accusing. He should call Tyler. It was Christmas morning. That's what fathers did on Christmas morning, right? They called their kids, but it was only 6:30. Tyler would still be asleep. Probably wouldn't appreciate being woken up by his dad's guilt-driven holiday phone call. Michael had learned that lesson last year. He'd called at 7, eager to wish his son Merry Christmas, and Tyler had been groggy and annoyed, clearly just wanting to go back to sleep. So Michael waited. He drank his coffee and looked at Sophie's drawing and thought about last night. About how easily Sophie had grabbed his hand. About Elena's quiet strength and Danny's silly observations. About how normal it had felt sitting in that booth being part of something. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant wishing him Merry Christmas. Another from a business partner. 3 more from clients. He responded to none of them. Instead, he found himself thinking about Elena's old car with its cracked windshield, about Danny's worn coloring book, about the way Elena had hesitated when he offered to pay for dinner. They were struggling, not in an obvious way, not in a way they'd complain about, but in that quiet way that poor people struggle, making do, getting by.
One emergency away from disaster. Michael looked around his apartment.
At the designer furniture he'd barely used. At the expensive art on the walls that he'd bought because his decorator said it was important. At the gleaming kitchen where he never cooked. At the second bedroom that served as storage for things he'd never needed in the first place. What was he doing with all this? At 9 o'clock he called Tyler. The phone rang 4 times before his son answered. "Hey, Dad. Merry Christmas, buddy." "Yeah, Merry Christmas. Did you get my text?" "Your text?" Michael pulled the phone away from his ear to check. Sure enough, there was a message from Tyler sent at midnight. "Merry Christmas, Dad," that was it. No emoji, no extra punctuation. Just 4 words sent out of obligation. "Yeah, I got it, thanks." Silence on the other end. Michael could hear voices in the background. Tyler's grandparents probably starting their Christmas morning. "So, what are you doing today?" Michael asked. "Grandma made breakfast. We're gonna open presents soon. Then Uncle Rick and Aunt Michelle are coming over with the cousins." "That sounds nice." More silence. Michael scrambled for something to say. "How's school going? Christmas break treating you okay?" "It's fine. School's school. Any plans with friends?" "Maybe. Josh might have a party next week." It was like pulling teeth. Michael felt the familiar frustration rising. Wanted to snap at his son, to put in some effort, to meet him halfway. But then he remembered what Sophie had said. If you want to know something, you ask. If you pay attention, Michael took a breath. Listen, Tyler, I want to do better. I know I haven't been the best dad. I know I wasn't there when I should have been. But I want to change that. If you'll let me. The silence stretched so long, Michael thought the call had dropped. Then Tyler said quietly, Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay, we can try. It wasn't much. But it was more than Michael had expected. Thank you. Can I call you tomorrow? Just to talk. Not about anything important, just to talk? Yeah, sure. Tyler's voice was cautious, like he was testing the words. I should probably go. Grandma's calling me. Okay, I love you, Tyler. Another pause. Love you too, Dad. The call ended and Michael stood there holding his phone, feeling shaky and hopeful and terrified all at once. It wasn't fixed. One phone call didn't erase years of absence. But it was a start. He looked at Sophie's drawing again. The golden retriever smiled up at him and Michael made a decision. An hour later, he was driving through the snowy streets, his back seat full of shopping bags. He'd hit the one 24-hour store that was open on Christmas, wandering the aisles like a man on a mission. He'd bought carefully, trying not to go overboard, trying to think about what they'd actually need and use. For Sophie, he'd found a deluxe art set with paints and brushes and a real canvas, and a book about veterinarians, full of pictures and information. For Danny, building blocks and a dinosaur puzzle and a storybook about a boy and his dog. For Elena, he'd struggled more. What do you get for a single mother who works too hard and never asks for help? Finally, he'd settled on a nice blanket, thick and soft, and a gift card to the grocery store, tucked inside a card with a note. For practical things. Please don't be too proud to use it. He found their apartment building easily. Elena had mentioned the street name last night, and there was only one rundown brick building on the block. The parking lot was full of old cars, and someone had strung Christmas lights along the railing of the second-floor walkway. They blinked red and green, one strand half burned out. Michael sat in his car for a moment, suddenly nervous. Was this weird? Was he overstepping? He barely knew these people. But then he remembered Sophie's hand in his and Elena's tired smile, and the way he'd felt less alone for the first time in years. He grabbed the bags and headed for apartment 2C. His knock was answered almost immediately by Sophie, who flung the door open with a shriek. Michael! Michael's here! Mama Danny, Michael's here. Sophie, who... Elena appeared behind her daughter, still in pajamas and a bathrobe, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes went wide when she saw Michael. Michael, what are you doing here? I brought some things. For Christmas. Is this okay? I should have called first, I'm sorry, I just thought. You brought presents? Danny appeared, launching himself at Michael's legs. For us? Danny, gentle, Elena said, but she was smiling. Michael, you didn't have to do this, I wanted to. Can I come in? Elena stepped back and Michael entered their apartment. It was small, maybe a third the size of his place, with worn carpet and walls that needed painting. But it was warm and lived in, with pictures on the walls and toys neatly organized in bins and a small Christmas tree in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments and paper chains. It's not much, Elena said, seeing him look around. But it's home. It's perfect, Michael said, and meant it. Sophie and Danny were already tearing into the bags, exclaiming over each item. Sophie gasped when she saw the art set, handling it like it was made of glass. Danny immediately dumped out the building blocks and started constructing something ambitious. Michael, this is too much, Elena said softly. Really, we can't accept, please, Michael interrupted. Let me do this. Last night, sitting with you all, was the first time I've felt like myself in years. You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing. Please let me give something back. Elena's eyes were bright with tears. She opened the card, read his note, and pressed her lips together. The grocery store card? Too much? No, it's thoughtful. Most people want to give toys and fun things. Nobody thinks about groceries and bills and the boring stuff that actually matters. She wiped at her eyes. Thank you. Thank you. For last night. For taking in a lonely stranger on Christmas Eve. You weren't a stranger, Sophie said, looking up from her art set. You were Michael, and there it was. That simple truth from a 7-year-old. He wasn't a stranger. Somehow, in the space of one evening, he'd become something more. Do you want coffee? Elena asked. I was just about to make some. It's not fancy, but I'd love coffee. So Michael sat on their worn couch while Elena made coffee in their tiny kitchen. Sophie spread out her new art supplies on the floor, already planning her first painting. Danny built towers with his blocks, narrating an elaborate story about dinosaurs and castles. Christmas music played softly from an old radio, and Michael Henderson, who lived in a penthouse apartment and drove an expensive car and had more money than he could spend, felt richer than he ever had in his life. Elena brought him coffee in a chipped mug that said, "World's Best Mom." She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I called the diner this morning," she said quietly, "to thank Rita for last night, to tell her about you. She said she knew. Said she could see you needed us as much as we needed you. Smart woman. She is." Elena sipped her coffee. "So what happens now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're a successful businessman with a big life. We're a struggling family in a small apartment. This was a nice moment, but moments end." Michael looked at Sophie, carefully sorting her paints by color, at Danny, so focused on his building project, at Elena with her tired eyes and strong spirit. "Maybe it doesn't have to end," he said. "Maybe it could be the beginning of something." Elena looked at him, searching his face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she smiled. "Maybe it could be." Sophie looked up from her paints. "Does that mean you'll come to my school art show?" "It's next month." "I'll be there," Michael promised. "And my birthday?" Danny asked. "I'm going to be 5. "We're having cake. Wouldn't miss it." Elena laughed, shaking her head. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into." But Michael thought maybe he did, and for the first time in a very long time, he was exactly where he wanted to be. 3 months later, Michael stood in the back of Sophie's school gymnasium, holding his phone sideways to record the art show. Parents crowded around him, but he'd gotten there early enough to claim a good spot. He'd learned that trick from Elena, who was always strategic about kid events. Sophie's painting hung on the far wall, a burst of colors showing a family having dinner together, 4 stick figures around a table all holding hands. She'd painted it during winter break, working carefully with the supplies Michael had given her for Christmas. "That's Sophie's, right?" A woman next to him pointed at the painting. "With the family?" "Yeah, that's hers. It's beautiful. The emotion in it, you know. You can tell she really feels what she's painting." Michael nodded, his throat tight. He knew exactly what Sophie had been feeling when she painted it because he'd felt it too. Belonging. Connection. Home. His phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Dad, can you help me with my history paper this weekend? It's about World War II. Michael smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. Want to video chat tomorrow so we can work on it together?" The response came quickly. "Yeah, that works, thanks." It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had before Christmas. They talked now, real conversations, not just awkward check-ins. Michael had flown to Seattle twice in 3 months. They'd gone to a Seahawks game, just the two of them, and Tyler had actually seemed happy to see him. They were rebuilding, one conversation at a time. "Michael!" Sophie appeared out of nowhere, crashing into him with a hug. She wore a dress that was slightly too big, probably a hand-me-down, and her hair was pulled back with a ribbon. "Did you see my painting?" "I did. It's incredible, Sophie. You're so talented. My teacher says it shows real heart." "What does that mean?" "It means you painted something true, something that matters to you." Sophie nodded seriously. "It's us. From Christmas, remember?" "I remember." Elena appeared, carrying Danny on her hip even though he was getting too big for that. She looked tired, but she was smiling. She'd picked up extra shifts this month to cover some unexpected bills, and Michael had helped where he could, though he had to be careful about it. Elena had her pride. "Did you get a good spot?" she asked. "The best. I've got video of Sophie's painting from every angle." "You're worse than the other parents," Elena teased. "Next you'll be making a scrapbook." "I might," Michael said, and he wasn't entirely joking. He'd started keeping things. Sophie's drawings, photos from Danny's birthday party, the program from the school winter concert where Sophie had sung in the choir, little pieces of a life he was building bit by bit. They walked through the art show together, Sophie pointing out her classmates' work and providing detailed commentary on each piece. Danny got bored halfway through and Michael ended up carrying him. "Die." The boy's head heavy on his shoulder. "Sleepy, buddy?" Michael asked. Hungry." "We're going to get pizza after this," Elena said. "That okay with you, Michael?" Perfect. It had become their routine. School events, then dinner. Weekend trips to the park. Movie nights in Elena's small living room. Danny falling asleep halfway through. Sophie staying awake until the very end and providing running commentary. Michael had a drawer at their apartment now, just some spare clothes for when he stayed late or came early. Sophie had declared it Michael's drawer and had decorated it with stickers. His friends from his old life wouldn't recognize him. He'd started leaving work at 5, delegating more to his managers, actually using his vacation days. His business partner had asked if everything was okay, if he was having some kind of crisis. Michael had laughed and said no. Everything was finally right. At the pizza place, Danny revived long enough to eat 3 slices and get sauce all over his face. Sophie drew on her paper placemat another family picture. She always drew family pictures now. "I have news," Elena said after the kids had run off to look at the arcade games in the corner. "Good news, yeah? I got offered a day position. Regular hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Better pay, better benefits. I'd actually get to have dinner with my kids every night." "Elena, that's amazing." Michael reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "When do you start?" 2 weeks. I'm terrified and excited and I can't believe it's real. You deserve this. You've worked so hard." Elena's eyes were bright. "I couldn't have done it without you. The way you helped me with the application, practiced interview questions with me, watched the kids so I could go to the interview. That's what family does," Michael said. Then stopped, surprised at his own words. Elena was looking at him strangely. "Is that what we are, family?" Michael thought about it. Thought about the last 3 months. About Saturday morning pancakes at Elena's apartment. About Sophie's school events and Danny's bedtime stories. About feeling needed and wanted and part of something bigger than himself. About how his apartment had started to feel less like home, and their small crowded space had started to feel more like one. "Yeah," he said. "I think we are." Elena's smile was soft and real. "I think so too." Danny came running back, demanding more quarters for the arcade games. Sophie followed, asking if she could get dessert. They were loud and demanding, and Michael loved them both so much it hurt. Later, after they'd dropped Elena and the kids at home, Michael drove through the city feeling lighter than he had in years. His phone rang. "Tyler." "Hey buddy, what's up?" "Just wanted to tell you something." Tyler's voice was hesitant. "Mom and I have been talking. About this summer. And I was thinking maybe I could come stay with you for a few weeks." "In Chicago?" Michael nearly swerved into the next lane. "Really? You want to come here?" "Yeah, I mean, if that's okay. You're always talking about Sophie and Danny and Elena, and I kind of want to meet them, and we could do stuff, just us." "If you want, if I want, Tyler, I would love that. More than anything." "Cool. Okay. Mom says she'll call you to figure out the details." "That sounds perfect." They talked for another 10 minutes, about school and friends and Tyler's latest video game obsession. When they hung up, Michael realized he'd been parked outside his building for the entire conversation, just sitting in his car, talking to his son. He looked up at his apartment building, at his window 20 floors up, dark and empty. Then he thought about Elena's apartment, with its worn carpet and homemade decorations and constant noise. He thought about Sophie's art show and Danny's sticky hugs and Elena's tired smile. He thought about Tyler coming to visit, meeting this family that had adopted Michael as one of their own. Last Christmas Eve, he'd been alone in a diner, so lonely he could barely breathe. One little girl had asked him a simple question. "Do you want to have dinner with us?" That question had changed everything. Michael looked at his phone, at the photo on his lock screen. It was from Danny's birthday party. All of them crowded together on Elena's couch, cake smeared and happy. Sophie making bunny ears behind Danny's head, Elena laughing at something Michael had said, and Michael himself right in the middle of them, looking more at home than he'd ever looked in his expensive apartment or fancy office. His assistant kept asking when he'd be back to his old schedule. His business partner wondered if he was losing his edge. His accountant was concerned about his decreased billable hours, but Michael wasn't worried. He'd spent years building wealth and success and ending up empty. Now he was building something different, something better. He was building a family, not through blood or marriage or any traditional way, but through choice, through showing up, through being present, through loving people who loved him back simply and honestly, without asking for anything except that he be there. Sophie had said it best, that first night in the diner. "You weren't a stranger. You were Michael, not Michael the businessman. Not Michael, the consultant. Not Michael, the success story, just Michael, the guy who showed up for art shows and birthday parties. The guy who carried sleepy kids and told bedtime stories. The guy who was learning, slowly but surely, what really mattered. His phone buzzed again. A text from Sophie. "Thank you for coming today. I love you." 3 words he'd heard more in the last 3 months than in the previous 3 years. Michael typed back, "I love you too, kiddo. See you Saturday for pancakes." Then he got out of his car and headed up to his apartment. Not to stay, though. He needed to pack a bag. He'd promised Danny he'd come over tomorrow to help build a fort, and Sophie wanted to show him her new painting. He had somewhere to be. He had people who needed him. He had a family. And it had all started because one little girl on a snowy Christmas Eve had been brave enough to ask a simple question. "Do you want to have dinner with us?" Michael had said yes. And that yes had saved his life.